So the first announcement I want to make is I want to just update you on our NDCC upcoming events. So as you probably know, many of you probably know, we have protests every Saturday from 11 to 12 at the Bartlett Mall. We're really excited about those. They've been well attended. We've had not as many as our friends in Ipswich, but we have had about between 50 and 70 people come every week. And then this Saturday, December 13th, which marks our 18th consecutive protest event, we're going to have a tea and toy party protest in March in honor of the Newburyport Tea Party. So that event apparently happened back in 1774 in Market Square, where Newburyporters burned tea to protest tariffs. So we will meet at the Bartlett Mall at 11 o'clock. We'll march down to Market Square and have a gathering there starting at about 11:30. And we'll learn about the history of this event and commemorate some of this very relevant Newburyport history. So everyone is welcome to come. You can dress in your colonial best. You're welcome to bring a sign about tariffs or a sign about democracy, and also bring a gift to donate to the Boys and Girls Club. So we encourage you to look on our website and to sign up, because there's a lot of little details about the event. And the last thing I want to make sure I let you know is that there's going to be a Zoom meeting on this Thursday, December 11th at 6:30, and then an in-person discussion on January 29th at the Senior Center. So visit the PEG Center website, or we'll have that information on in our emails and on our website to register for that event. We have a very busy and critical 2026 ahead, and the NBCC will be here meeting, protesting, and sharing information every step of the way. To conclude, I want to let you know I'm very excited about tonight's forum, and I'm really appreciative to the 5 speakers who are going to be joining us. Their work is vital to our democracy, and we're so pleased that they're here for this discussion. I hope we can have a constructive and respectful conversation. So with that, I'd like to turn the meeting over to my co-chair, Jared Hubbard, and thank you, everybody. Enjoy the evening.
So, way back in 1787, Thomas Jefferson was writing in print, and he remarked, "Were it left to me to decide whether we should have a government without newspapers or newspapers without a government, I should not hesitate a moment to prefer the latter." Right? So, getting people news and information is absolutely central to our democracy, but it is under threat today, and it has been under threat for a while. There's been some 3,500 local newspapers which have vanished over the last 25 years here in the United States. So we're very fortunate to have so many great local media personalities here today, and we wanted to bring some of them together, the people who are actually in the trenches getting us the information and on local events and local government, to hear about their experiences and their concerns. And we're very fortunate to have here as our moderator, Richard Lodge. So most of you know Richard from his time at the Daily News of Newburyport, where he was the editor for 5 years. He retired back in 2021. But what you may not know is that Richard's career in the news spans more than 4 decades. He edited daily newspapers in Lowell and New Bedford and in Portland, Maine, and then spent 15 years as the editor-in-chief of the Metro West Daily News in Framingham. He's also the chair of the New England Academy of Journalists and a recipient of their Yankee Quill Award in 2014 for his lifetime achievement both in and out of the newsroom. So Richard, I will turn it over to you now to introduce our panel.
Thank you, Jared and Sharon, and thanks to everybody for coming. Hope to make it an interesting evening, and I'm counting on these folks to make it especially informative. I'm going to introduce them first, and then I have some questions for them. And go on for a little while. I'm hoping that you also will have some questions that can direct them to this group. From my immediate left, we have Joe DiBiase. Joe was the host of Local Pulse, the weekly internet radio show and podcast produced in the newsroom of the Daily News of Newburyport, with more than 1,800 guests interviewed in 560 plus episodes. Each week, Joe interviews elected officials, nonprofit leaders, artists, artisans, and other local notables, bringing the news, views, arts, and food of the greater Newburyport area to listeners. Next to Joe is Eben Diskin. Eben grew up in Newburyport. He's lived here for most of his life. He's worked as a travel journalist for the last 7 years. Last year, Eben decided to combine his editorial background with his love for the Newburyport community and create the Townie, an online publication for opinion pieces on local issues. Next to him is Eric Gedstad. Eric is the executive editor The Ipswich Local News, a non-profit newsroom that publishes a weekly newspaper, mails it free to every mailbox in Ipswich and Raleigh. It also publishes stories on its website, thelocalnews.news. And previously, Eric worked for 3 decades as a communications, public affairs, and marketing professional in Massachusetts state government. Most recently, he was with the Massachusetts Housing Finance Agency. Next to him is Dave Rogers, a 27-year veteran of the newspaper business. He joined the Daily News as its breaking news and general assignment reporter in 2010. Dave remained in that role until he was promoted to editor in August of 2022. Dave lives in Newburyport. He enjoys playing rock and roll on his guitars and spending time with his team dog. He was hoping to play tonight, but completely out of time. Just a little bit of information. Jared sort of touched on it. The Medill Local News Initiative at Northwestern University, since 2005, they did a state and local news report. And then looking at a 10-year period, and they've just finished their second one. So they're looking back at 2 decades of what's happened to local news in America. And there have been dramatic transformations in the ecosystem of local news. Almost 40% of all local U.S. newspapers have vanished, leaving 50 million Americans with limited or no access to a reliable local news source. This trend continues to impact the media industry and audiences nationwide. Newspapers are disappearing at the same rate as in 2024. More than 130 papers shut down in the past year alone. Now, on that light note, this isn't solely about local newspapers, obviously. We have 4 different types of media dealt with here. We have a couple of newspapers represented by Dave Rogers of the daily newspaper and Eric Gedstad of a weekly. And we have Joe DiBiase, who does a weekly internet radio show, and Eben Diskin, who publishes an opinion column, online publication, basically. So they're different things, but these are people who are looking at the local scene and interpreting it in some ways, reporting it as news, other ways as opinions. So again, start with Joe and ask you to talk briefly about your organization and who you look for, who owns it, how big it is, and basically what it's all about.
I think I know how to work the microphone. So you're looking at 50% of the organization right here of Local Pulse, but I'm technically an employee of the Daily News. Local Pulse is produced at the Daily News Saturday mornings at 9 o'clock. It started at WNBP in October 2013, and we did 199 shows from WNBP until the station was sold to Bloomberg, and we thought that was the end of it. Until at the time, a good friend helping me, he was the producer and ran the audio equipment. He and I were both getting texts and emails and calls saying, "What's going on? We need Local Pulse back." So we actually approached Richard at the Daily News when he was the editor and said, "Would you like to have a streaming radio show, internet radio show?" So we do it over the internet now. I know some people find it a little more challenging to find. It goes out over a service called Podbean, and if you download the Podbean app, you can find Local Pulse very easily there. You can listen to it live 9 a.m. Saturday mornings, or any time after that on any podcast player. I don't know how all that works. It gets out on the internet somehow, and it appears. Could you ask me? Tell me what else you asked me to talk about. That's enough.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd like to talk. We'll talk some more.
Yeah, you do talk. That's what you do.
That's what I do.
Don't write so much, you talk. Evan, how about you? Hi, what's the Townie all about?
Yeah, so I started, the Townie about a year ago, and I started as an op-ed platform for opinion pieces on local issues that affect the greater Newburyport area. So that's Newburyport, Amesbury, Rowley, Salisbury, Newbury, Westbury. And since then, it's grown to become something more of a civic engagement platform. And that means op-eds are still the backbone, but I envision it as more of a way of getting people to care about civic issues and to engage with their community. I think op-eds are a great gateway for that, but it also means a few months ago I launched an event calendar, which aggregates events from the greater Newburyport area. It means during the recent election season doing candidate meet and greets with voters to encourage people to get out and get engaged and meet their representatives. It means hosting in-person candidate debates. And this Saturday I'm doing a holiday bar crawl, so people can get out there and meet people socially. So it's really about connecting people in the community, whether it's through a gateway to local issues, hearing from friends and neighbors what they think about what matters to them, or creating physical spaces and opportunities for people to get out there and meet each other. So that's me, that's the time.
Okay, thanks, Eric.
If only I had a podcast nearby. As Richard, thank you. Thank you for inviting me today. I'm wearing the Ipswich sweatshirt, but I do have a Newburyport Tennis Club hat on as homage to the community. I'm branding to my job. I'm the executive director of the Ipswich Local News, which is, and I've only been in the job for about 3 months. So I guess as they say, I'm more enough to be dangerous. But I love this job. I love newspapers. As Richard said, I worked in government for most of my career. So Ipswich Local News, first of all, we have an actual physical paper. This is it. It is a weekly. Usually it's 24 pages, sometimes 32. It is a very beloved paper. It started, Ipswich Local News started as online only by a guy named John Muldoon. And that he was getting going just as the old Ipswich Chronicle was kind of on its last breath. And then he had an online only thing, and some of you might remember Bill Wasserman, Ipswich guy, at one point owned a string of newspapers. I believe it was called North Shore Weeklies. And he saw that what John was up to, and Bill believed that there ought to be a physical newspaper in Ipswich again to take the place of the Chronicle. So he provided $100,000 in cash for the whole enterprise, started and financed. And John and his wife Kristen ran it out of their house for about 6 years. They really lived it and breathed it 24/7. That is what it takes to get a news organization up and running. Wasserman felt it was important that it was a nonprofit because the old model of subscriptions and advertising was no longer viable. I mean, that's why all of the papers that Richard talked about are disappearing because that model doesn't work anymore. So the nonprofit model has been very successful for us. We've been going for 6 years, and we have a board of directors. You asked who we're accountable to. We have a board of directors. We have 3 currently. We're building the board, hope to have 7. We do have advertisers. Print advertising is about half of our budget every month, so it's very valuable. And then we have a huge donor base. I think it's huge. We have about 1,900 people in Ipswich and Rowley that provide donations every year, and it's extremely gratifying. We get a lot of handwritten notes from people who say how much they appreciate the paper. They send us a check or donate on PayPal. And gosh, I think that's about it. I'll stop there unless you want to prompt me on something. No, that's okay. That's good. All right, over to Dave.
Dave, what about you?
Sure. First off, I want to thank John McCone for hiring me back in 2010. He's over there, so thanks very much. And thank you, Richard, for being such a great mentor. I really learned a lot from both you guys, so thank you both. So the Daily News Newburyport is a daily paper with 4 print editions and 2 e-editions. The e-editions are on Tuesday and Saturday. And my paper is part of the North Boston Media Group, the Salem News The Gloucester Times and the Eagle Tribune were owned by CNHI as a parent company, and were owned by a pension fund of teachers in Alabama. And they have very little influence in my job, at least. I'm very independent from them. It's basically, I have my marching orders from where they over what the Eagle Tribune is, and that is pretty much the limit of what my interaction with the corporate world. And I frankly can't stand the corporate world, but that's part of the job. We cover about, I don't know, it's like 12 towns, 11 towns, up to, from Seabrook all the way down to Raleigh. More recently, we've been focusing on our core towns and communities just because of staffing issues. So for long readers of the paper, folks who've been reading the paper for a while, we just don't have the staffing to cover as much as I want to cover Georgetown, for example, or Groveland. So we focus, with the resources we have, we focus on Newburyport, Amesbury, Newbury, Salisbury, CJ's town over there. And yeah, I think we kind of kick ass and we do a good job. So with that, I'm done.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll stick with you, Dave, and then we'll go the other way here. What role do you think the local newspaper plays in the local media environment?
You mean like a newspaper or for all of us? Just for me or you? I consider my job or the paper's job is to be kind of a gatekeeper. We get lots of information from community groups, resources, politicians. Our job is to filter it down, fact check them to make sure they are good for the readers. That's one thing that is a big push and pull, is that it's not about the groups who send me the things, it's the readers who come first. And there is some, like I said, push and pull on that. We provide access that other folks can't get. I can get through the yellow tape of a crime scene, or my reporters can, and we could hang out backstage and wait for the mayor to show up or talk to us. And so it's access, gatekeeper. We also like to break news. We also like to tell stories. And so someone told me, believe it or not, my favorite kind of stories are like dog stories. Dog stories, things that are just fun about the community, that live in a great city. And to me, that's what makes the paper run for me, is those kind of community newspapers. There's a story about a man who proposed to a woman at the Amesbury tree lighting over the weekend. I love that story, much more than Sean Reardon or anything else. I love that kind of stuff. So anyway, on that.
Slice of life, that's for sure. Eric, how about you? What role does the Ipswich operation play in your local media environment?
Yep. Thank you for the question. Most certainly, and first and foremost, I mean, we are here to inform, right? So certainly the goings on of town government and everything that kind of falls under that civic world, we want to be there, report on it, and help people make sense of it. Ipswich is a great news town. I'm always amazed at how much news there is going on. We have a lot of public infrastructure challenges right now, which provides a lot of news opportunities. And so these things are complicated and they're constantly changing. So I really believe our role is to help people understand what's going on, how their taxpayers' dollars are being used, where do these projects stand, what do the elected people say, how much money is it going to cost, all of that. And we often see at town meeting, I get so much pride because people walk into town meeting with our newspaper, which will often have a description of what the various warrant items are on the docket that evening. You know, we've provided an explainer. So I'm super proud of that. We say in our masthead that we're reader-supported and community-driven. So for me, of equal importance is the ability of the news to help bring the community together, help foster a sense of community. There's fascinating people. Everybody wants, I think, most people want to be part of a community, part of a group. Something has to help form the identity of that community. And, you know, we don't have, you know, we're not the only ones who are creating the Ipswich identity, but we're helping people sort of make sense of the town that they live in. I have a personal experience. One of the reasons I was so drawn to the paper is that my wife and I moved here during COVID. We didn't move because of COVID, but it happened that we moved during COVID. So we ended up in this new town, in this house, and isolated from the community. And this newspaper was arriving in our mailbox, and we hadn't subscribed, and we didn't pay anything for it. And it's just amazing that this was coming to us, and it helped us make sense of the community and feel like we were part of something, even though we were isolated. So I think informing and creating community cohesion are the two things that I think are most important.
Thanks, Eben. How about you? What role does the Townie play?
Yeah, well, different from these two guys, on the op-ed side of things, the Townie's goal is not to inform, it's to start a conversation. And I think op-eds can be informative, but the purpose of op-eds and what I want people to take away from them is not going to them for their news. And I'm very clear about that. What I want is for people to see it as a two-way dialogue. It's not reading an article with information and then processing it and then going about your day. It's reading an op-ed written by someone you might know, some local business owner, colleague, friend, and maybe engaging with that in comments on Facebook with each other, maybe writing an op-ed yourself. To me, that's what op-eds are. They're a two-way conversation between community members. So that's the role that I see the Townie playing. I want it to be a place where people can not go for the answers necessarily, but where people can go to start conversations, generate ideas, and hopefully run with those ideas. And on the non-op-ed side of things, on the civic engagement side, with the events, with you know, the election-related events, debates, and things I was doing, I think the role in the community is just to provide a space for people to come together as a community and learn more about what's going on, meet each other, talk to each other, exchange ideas in a more physical sense. The op-eds are that, but online on the publication.
John, how about you?
So, unlike you guys, I assume I might be the only person that has no previous communication experience. Local Pulse was born over a beer and a burger with the former owner of WMVP. And I just said, I'd like to have something where people can learn more about what's going on in Newburyport. And that was the genesis of it over the past 12 years. It's become, my favorite part of the show is bringing in elected officials, because frequently with the mayors, I interviewed Donna Holiday 60 plus times. Sean Reardon, not quite as much, but he's only been there 3.5 years or 4 years now. Mayor of Amesbury's been on a bunch. And when the mayors come on, they get a full hour. I don't know any place else where you can hear from the mayor. And it's completely unscripted, both with Sean Reardon and Donna Holiday, and also with Cassandra Go over in Amesbury. I always say, is there anything you don't want to talk about? And there's never been a time when mayors or city councilors or any other elected officials say, let's not talk about X, Y, or Z. It's always unscripted. Frequently, I don't know what I'm going to ask until we sit down at the table. And that's my favorite thing about doing it, is being able to get those elected officials speaking to their constituents. We've had, I think, more than 25 candidate forums over the years. Sometimes that's the only candidate forum for that particular race. Frequently that was the case. And the relationships that I've developed with our elected officials has given me the opportunity to be able to text the mayor and say, can you come in Saturday? And oftentimes it's, sure, what do you need? So being able to bring that to the residents and our listeners is my favorite part. But we also have nonprofit leaders, artists and artisans, as Richard said in the intro. And it's another avenue for those people to get their word out. We're very blessed here in Newburyport. If you listen to Local Pulse, you'll hear me say it's the best place on earth, almost every week. And we're blessed with the number of nonprofits we have, but they struggle sometimes getting their message out, so I'm happy to provide that as well.
Thanks. I'm going to stick with you and then go the other way. You get up in the morning, it didn't used to be this way. Back in the day, some of you might remember getting up in the morning and there was a newspaper on the doorstep, right? And I grew up in a household with 3 daily newspapers, 2 big city papers and a little city paper. Things changed quite a bit. So now you can pick up your phone. There's so many different places you can get news, not local news necessarily, but so many different places. So I'd ask you guys, where do you think people in this area get their news? And is that a good thing, or are you concerned about it?
Yes. Yes and yes. No, I think they have a lot of places they can get news. They get it from the Daily News. I hope they get it from Local Pulse. Eben provides, he says it's not to inform, but a lot of times the op-eds that are in the Townie are presenting information that I didn't know about, so they're informing me. But unfortunately, or fortunately, people are also getting their news from TikTok and X or Twitter or whatever it might be called now. And there's no, I don't want to say fact check, but there's no way to authenticate. There's no way to know if that's actually true, what's coming over those media vehicles. So I don't think it's a bad thing that people are getting their news from somewhere else, but I think it is a bad thing that they just take whatever they're seeing and hearing as gospel.
Okay, Eben? And I guess my question really is, not just where did they get their news, but where did they learn things about where we are, our communities?
I think I agree with pretty much everything Joe said. I think people get their information mostly from short form viral videos online, unfortunately. But I think in our community, people learn a great deal from local social media groups. I think one thing I've learned from starting the town 8 years ago is how online people in this community are when it comes to local social media. And that means Nextdoor, the community Facebook groups. There's 12 to 14 of them, which I did not know before I started this. And people are all over it. I'll post something, and that's how I get the word out about what I'm doing. And whenever I post an article, people comment for better or worse. And I think people enjoy engaging. They're very passionate. People here take their local politics and their civic engagement very seriously. I think sometimes that can be for the worse and come with some vitriol. But it's been both heartening and discouraging to see how people consume media here, because I think there is a thirst for information, and not just information, but for conversation about local issues on all sides of those issues. And there are so many outlets online for that I think it can be a little dangerous. But kind of having waded into those waters this past year, it's been interesting to see that at least there is an appetite for local matters, people wanting to get involved, people wanting to lend their voice to a conversation. And I think that energy is to be channeled appropriately, and often isn't, but that's what I've noticed.
Joe, you want to jump in?
Yeah. One thing that frustrates me a little bit is people expect it all, some people, I should say, expect the information, the news to come to them for them to not have to do any work to get it. And not work, but go out and seek it. And that can be a little frustrating when we're providing the information. can lead a horse to water, but they're not always drinking, and they want the information to come to them. I can't make it any easier than just, all they have to do is queue it up on their iPhone or their laptop or whatever. But getting that information, the ability for them to see it or hear it is can be a challenge, because if you know anyone in marketing, it used to be print, television, radio. That was it. And now there are so many outlets that people are a little they're confused as to where to go to get the information that they want. But they want the information with as little effort as possible.
Eric, what's your? How do people get the news and it?
I will concede that I don't have any formal studies on this, and this is for this enterprise, Ipswich Local News is pretty all-consuming as far as energy. But I do know that people are on Facebook for certain. We have a Facebook account, and every time we publish a story, we put it on Facebook, and we get plenty of comments there, and they can click through and see it on our website. Facebook is the highest, or I should say, it is the marketing terminology. It's the number one place where people who end up on our website got there from, if that makes sense. It's a referral site. In Ipswich, there is a popular Facebook account called I Love Ipswich, and then there's sort of its evil, malevolent twin called Ipswich Piss and Moan. And a lot of people on there, and you can only imagine, right? But I'm very proud. I think a lot of people do get their news from us. We don't really have a local competitor, and then, I'll concede that people get their information on all manner of social media applications. Yeah, I'll reserve judgment on that. That's all.
So did you say you do have a local competitor?
We do not have a local news competitor.
You do probably allow it.
There is something called the Town Common that is published and covers around the world.
In the Daily News.
And the Daily News. Yes.
But Dave, where do people get their news, and are you concerned about what they're getting, where they get it?
Well, sure, I'm concerned about how they're getting it, for sure. I mean, the floodgates kind of comment, I think Joe said that, I just remember, I've been in this business long enough to know when Newburyport comments showed up, or nice people of Newburyport, or kind people of Newburyport, or Newburyport politics and issues showed up. They're all competitors in a way. And and frankly, we do get some ideas from those sites, and they get some stuff from us, and it's a two-way stream in that. But it is the wild west show up there, the internet, and especially Facebook. And that's what I think, let's say, as much as I want the Daily News to be the number one source of information, I feel like Facebook is the place where most of folks look for first. And that's our biggest competitor. And so my strategy has always been to embrace it and not to pretend it doesn't exist. And so I put a lot of things on Facebook as well. And I put photos, dog photos, which I love, as I mentioned. And that's with politics, but then the comments become crazy, and I have to turn off the comments. And I put a comment about the pride flag down there, and you know what happened. I mean, you know what happened, and it just gets ridiculous. So that's my biggest concern, is Facebook and vitriol that's going on, and it's impossible to police. I think that's so. I mean, I'm the last person to speak, but it definitely is Facebook. That's the thing that drives a lot, and is my biggest concern as a pure journalist. And going forward, it's hard to know what's going to happen in a few years. It's hopeful that folks will want to get vetted information from us that's been fact-checked as much as we can with our staff, and that they're professional journalists at the wheel, monitoring these situations and being the gatekeeper, as opposed to, I'll tell you one quick story. It drives me nuts when I'm at home watching a football game and someone says on Facebook, "What was that big bang? You know, what's that big noise? What's that?" It's
All those sirens down in the south end.
and it's like, so, and then, I mean, it's like that all the time, and so I have to judge that's a real bang or a real helicopter, or is it, you know, so that's a hard thing for me to do, and I'm all set.
Sure.
People on Facebook, and this pertains mostly to you, Dave, you'll post a link to a story, and then they get angry that they have to subscribe to the daily news to actually.
I wasn't gonna say that, I really was gonna stay away from that, but it drives me absolutely bonkers that I post something, a link online, and they expect it to be for free, or get mad at me. And someone, I don't know if it was on your show or Richard, or someone said something like, it's like a hamburger place putting a sandwich sign outside saying, "Come and eat," and they get mad that they have to pay for it because it says "come and eat." It drives me bonkers. But anyway, so yeah, it's definitely my frustration.
And yet, you're sitting next to a guy who works for a nonprofit news outlet, right? You're giving away a lot of news. Yeah. I mean, so, you know, how do you monetize that? I think everybody, Joe not so much. You know, Joe's not trying to monetize what he does, although certainly
Local Pulse is free. You don't have to be a subscriber to the daily news.
but you have to pay the bills.
We do, and that's where we have to fundraise, right? So we're in the middle of a fundraising push right now, and you gotta roll up your sleeves, and you gotta ask for money, and then you gotta ask again, and you gotta ask again, and you gotta keep reminding people of the benefit of the newspaper and the fact that we do give it away for free, and that, you know, we work hard to be unbiased, we don't take editorial positions. Yeah, you just have to keep reminding them of the value of it, and I think it's working. We have a lot of people who donate and they believe in what it is, but it's a totally different model. Yeah, you gotta.
You brought up something there that in reading your paper the last few weeks, there's a lot of letters to the editor. I think you have 2 or 3 regular columnists who seem to be local columnists, and you have no editorials. So is there something legally that prevents you from having an opinion from the newspaper? Are you trying not to upset your funders, or what's the reason behind it? You just don't need it.
I don't believe it's a legality. You know, as a nonprofit, I think, you know, optics are certainly something to be considered, but it's been the tradition of the paper, again, for the last 6 years. The founders felt really strongly that they didn't want to take political positions and endorse candidates and do that because there was always going to be some segment of the population in Ipswich that would react. And let's face it, we live in very reactionary times. You take some sort of editorial position, you're going to get branded as too left or too right, and very difficult to recover from that. And then your Facebook comments, right, are nothing but, oh, that's just the fill in the blank, Ipswich local news, the right leaning or left leaning. So
Is there a reason not to, I mean, are you find yourself defending yourself there? I mean, can't you just say we're just playing it straight? I guess people are always going to criticize you on Facebook.
People will always criticize us on Facebook. They criticize us less if we don't take, you know, hardline partisan positions. And people seem to like it. A lot of the handwritten notes we get are about thank you for the local, unbiased, balanced news. People really appreciate it.
Dave was itching to say something.
No, I'm just saying, I read a column or two, I get branded left or right. It's possible to ignore, it's possible to avoid, so that's all.
You get branded left and right.
Yes, but I think I'm doing a good job. If people on both sides say I'm a leftist or a rightist, that's sure.
Another bit of information from the Medill Local News Initiative. They did a survey of about 1,100 adults. It was in the Chicago area. Put that right out here. But it can be taken as a microcosm for what's happening locally, I think, across the country. They get people in the suburbs, the city, out in the country. And they found that Generation Z is tuning out local news. They found that audiences in general are wary of AI, and that readers are turning to independent content creators, such as people posting on social media and Substack. They did find some good news. Audiences still follow local news. The majority of Chicago area residents, about half, consume news every day, which is a pretty good, still good number. But with Generation Z, just 32% of people ages 18 to 29 follow local news daily. How are you addressing that? How are you? Joe?
I'm a firm believer that all politics is local, and I believe that it frustrates me when people, every once in a while, more than occasionally, I'll get someone that wants to come on Local Pulse and talk about national issues, and I say, it's right in the name of the show. It's Local Pulse. There are plenty of places you can go and talk about national issues. Locally, you have much more of an impact in a political way than you do in a national or even a statewide kind of thing. And I really stay focused on local. Once in a while, we'll get up to a state level issue, but not very often. I mean, we're talking local zoning issues and, cookie shop. Those are the things that we focus on. We don't do too many dog stories, but well, dogs are horrible on mic, so. So I really try to stay local, and it discourages me that to hear that Gen Z is tuning out of local issues. I don't know if that's because when I was younger, I was concentrating on other things. So as they age, maybe they'll become more engaged with local, but I don't know.
Evan, how about you? You're more in that category.
I think getting younger people to care about local issues is probably the hardest thing that we all have to do. I think younger people care a lot more about national issues, get a lot more animated about national issues. Going to the No Kings rally that the NDCC hosted, a ton of young people, everywhere. You go to a city council debate or the mayoral debate, and there might be one person under 40, and that's me. So I don't have an answer to the question. I do think that younger people get their news from and their information, and their kind of they tune into short form videos, they tune into TikTok, they tune into Instagram Reels, things that appeal to a shorter attention span. And I'm somewhat guilty of that too. And I think it's hard to bridge that gap. When you go to these local events, it's significantly older people who I think grew up with newspapers, with slower forms of news, with the nightly news that they were used to tuning into every night at 6 o'clock. And they're in that habit, and they prioritize civic engagement in a way that younger people expected, like Joe said, to just be kind of delivered to them somehow on their phone through an algorithm, and they don't go out and look for it in a way that older people are trained to do. So I have, it's a long way of saying I don't know, and that's part of my goal is to make civic engagement cool somehow. And that sounds utopian, but I think it's possible slowly.
Careful when you call older people.
I'm one of them.
There you go.
So I don't know if it was just published today. It might have been a column by a high school student about lifeguards that was in the town. So do you work to try to find younger people to write pieces? Are you an equal opportunity harasser trying to get
I think that's a good way to describe it, yeah. It's been a long process actually to try to get younger people to write op-eds. I've gone to speak at Triton last spring for their journalism class, trying to tell them about the Townie, about independent media, and encourage them to write. sort of doing the same, working with a journalism professor or teacher at NHS, and just recently have been getting op-eds from high school students in journalism. And I'm really excited about that because like I said, I'm trying to emphasize younger voices. I want to elevate, part of the point of Townie is to elevate voices into the realm of civic engagement and opinion that haven't been historically elevated in op-eds. A lot of it is the same characters you read over and over again. And that's the case to the Townie as well. And I need those people, I'm thankful for those people, but I want diverse voices, I want younger voices. And to do that, I can't wait for them to come to me. I have to go out and try to engage them and get them interested somehow. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Eric, how's it working in Ipswich?
We've been fortunate to have, over the years, a number of high school students who have been very active with the paper and writing. There's a journalism program at Ipswich High, which has been a little bit of a feeder system. I'm going to go speak to them and try to recruit a new cohort, so that's one thing we do. We also try to provide coverage of young people in town who are doing things. High school sports is certainly one thing. A lot of music and arts in Ipswich, and a lot of young, really standout musicians and performers. So we try to profile them and let people know what they're up to. Yeah, keep it interesting. There's always interesting stories out there of younger people. I think that's how to get at it. And I don't lose a lot of sleep over Gen Z doesn't pay attention to local issues, right? Because I think of myself at that age, I was not obsessed with what was going on at town meeting. That's the age group, right? I'm Gen X, and everybody worried about Gen X and whether we were going to be engaged. And now here we are, we're all very engaged. A lot of us in Gen X. So it can't be all things to all people, right? The Ipswich Local News is not going to compete with dancers on TikTok. Okay? We're just not. We might eventually get into a little bit of video to promote our newspaper, but yeah, we have a lane. We're comfortable in our lane. It's serving its niche. Nothing to sleep over.
Just before you answer this, Dave, I've been in the position Dave is in, and it's where you know that your traditional print newspaper readers skew older, don't they? And you want to keep them. You want to give them what they're expecting in the local newspaper. And yet there's younger people you're trying to lure as well. And you're juggling these things all at once. Toss that ball to you.
Sure. So we also encourage high schoolers to send us op-eds and letters to the editor, and there's civics classes in high school here, and they do send us stuff, and I'm glad to publish it. I always make it obvious right away that they're high schoolers, so they don't get jumped on by angry people. I think a lot of people here, myself included, we kind of feel like it's a civic duty to subscribe to the local paper, to be informed, and to have a newspaper to support it. I don't know if that's going to be, is that being passed down to generation? I don't think so. That's just my guess. And I think that's part of the issue that we're facing is that civic duty to be in the know of what was happening in the local community is not that important as it used to be when I was a kid and when you were younger. And my father still has 5 papers delivered to his place, and he's maybe 1% of people do that, and he's 86. So there you go. Did that answer your question, or did I answer it?
I'm just asking. I think that whether it answers.
Did I answer the question?
Yeah, I did. I think you did. So I want to talk a minute about AI. So think about that. A couple of different experiences I've had with newspapers and artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, by the way, is a tool. It's not inherently evil, right? And it's in many, many parts of our lives all the time. You pick up your phone and you're in. But so today I read a story online from a newspaper And at the bottom it said, if you want to listen to the story, click here. And there's an advisory that it says, the story was reported and edited by a human, by humans. What you listen to is generated by AI, just so you know. I clicked on it, and the voice, the AI voice, says the same thing that it just said, just to tell you this is edited and written by humans, and this is an artificial voice, and then proceeds to read the story. Very helpful. If you're doing something else, you're listening to that news thing. Another thing is, in doing some copy editing for a newspaper recently, I'm in their program, editing a story, and the first thing I do is I read the raw copy, get a quick sense of what it is, and then I go to the bottom of that page and I click on a button, and I wait about 10 seconds, and there in front of me are 3 suggested headlines, 3 suggested summary sentences, and a number of other things that are useful in online publishing. So I pick one of those headlines if I like it, if it's accurate, if it's kind of what I was going to say, or I just ignore them and I go back to the top of the story and I write my own headline. More often than not, I pick one of those 3 headlines because they're pretty damn good. That's artificial intelligence, and that's happening in a lot of news operations and probably a lot of different other companies that, kind of digest a bunch of information in front of them and then give you something and you decide as a human whether you're going to use it or not. So that's just, it's out there. So this Nadell survey, 52% of consumers are uncomfortable with local news produced mostly by artificial intelligence. But 47% of the people surveyed approve of a supporting role for AI in news production. How do you see AI in our local news scene? Dave, you want to take that?
So that poll seems a little bit, that phraseology sounds a little like supporting. We use AI to take, someone, a reporter takes notes, he or she uses AI to transcribe it, but then checks his own notes or her notes to make sure it's accurate. So I'm not sure what that means. Is that supported? What was the survey saying?
That's
47%
supporting role for AI in news production. Yeah.
So would you consider what we do that?
It's not writing a story for you.
Right. So we obviously don't use AI to write stories, but an expediency to make sure we can get as much news as we can on paper, we use AI to transcribe things. So that's about as far as we go with that, and that's as far as I want to go with that. And that's it.
I think AI is it's a helpful tool to some extent if you want to try to shorten a phrase or maybe get some suggestions for headlines. I'm not terribly worried about that because I think this is what Dave was also saying is you're not relying on AI to generate the news, right? You're using it to help tell the story so that your readers, who are the ultimate beneficiaries, will understand it as best as possible. Personally, I don't use it that much. It's just not as fun. It's more fun to write and use your imagination and come up with that golden phrase or headline. And I think that's what we're doing mostly. Eben?
I think in the opinion world, AI would do a real disservice to the integrity of the publication because the whole point of an opinion publication is that it is the unfiltered thoughts and writings of a neighbor or someone in your community. And I think that there's even the suspicion that those thoughts are being filtered through a lens of AI, or being written with AI, or the opinion doesn't actually belong to the person that's expressing it, or was generated by a robot. I think it discredits the entire publication. So in my submission guidelines, I'm very clear that no use of AI is allowed, and I try to do my best to edit for that. I haven't really had any issues so far. I know AI is getting so sophisticated, it might be difficult for me to do that soon, but as of right now, it doesn't play any role in what what I do, and I hope it doesn't.
Yeah, Joe?
I use AI almost on a daily basis in all areas of my life, but not at Local Pulse. Several months ago, just for fun, I asked ChatGPT who Joe DiBiase of Newburyport was. And it said that I was a longtime host of Local Pulse. And then it went into a long history of my broadcast and print journalism career, which is completely wrong. I had none, and I don't know where it came from.
But it looks good on your resume.
It looks great on my resume, for sure. So, but for Local Pulse, there's no AI involved. It's me attending and watching city council meetings, having relationships with people in the city, reading the daily news, which more people should do, and that's about it.
I have one correction.
Yeah, go ahead, correction.
Correction to what I said. I have used AI on 2 occasions to help with images for articles. By far the hardest thing I have to do is finding pictures that are legal for me to use for op-eds. And usually I try to go out and take those pictures myself. But there have been, I think, 2 occasions where it was just such a niche, strange article. There was no picture that I could go out and take. There was nothing online. And I had AI generate an image and could crop it in a way that made sense. Just had to be transparent about that. So yeah,
Were
for
you
images,
transparent on the web about that?
say that again.
Were you transparent underneath that photo? Did it say generated by AI?
It does not. No. I'd be curious what other people's thoughts on
Now
that.
you fessed up. So.
Can AI sue me for using their image?
Let me project into the future here, though. And this is actually in the past. There have been some newspapers that thought that they could produce sports stories using artificial intelligence by just getting basic press release type copy from a coach. The coach types it up, sends it in, newspaper feeds that into an AI program. It actually puts it into kind of logical, what, when, where format. And what's wrong with that? The person will read it and say, okay, yeah, I got the verbs in the right tense and all that. We spell the coach's name right, but what's wrong with that? That's the future in some cases, possibly. Is that a problem?
You could end up with Dewey beats Truman.
What?
Dewey beats Truman.
Dewey beats Truman.
So maybe some people here get
14 to 12.
that. No, I mean,
Amesbury beats
bad, garbage in, garbage out.
I just didn't know if that, everyone take that or just kick that one.
I mean, Joe's correct.
There's so much, I put in Paul McCartney and they say he's a right-handed bass player, and he's not. And so you can't count on it for a lot of stuff. That scares me that you have a bio that didn't exist. So that must have freaked you out.
It was kind of fun to see it. I mean, I knew it was fun. And it was several months ago. If I did it today, I probably wouldn't do that because every day it's getting better and better.
But then it goes like, you're right, I was wrong. And that's weird. Sorry.
But, Richard, when you generate headlines, are some of them kind of clickbaity?
In this particular publication, however they have set this up, they're not really clickbait. I mean, they're clickbait in that they are logical search engine optimization words in them, but they're not, naked select board member. It's more like, the town.
Select board chair destroys town resident.
Yeah, not a lot of, no, it's more that the headlines have the town name in it, they might have the person's name in it, they might have active verbs, that you would normally use, and that's clickbait. I mean, you're trying to tell the reader online as quickly as possible what this story's about, and tell them it's about their community, and Jane Smith is in it, whatever the words that are meant to get the attention of people to read the story, or at least to read the first sentence. So, is that clickbait? It's smart. To me, it's smart everything.
As long as it's accurate, I don't think it's clickbait.
Yeah, I mean,
It's the kind of stuff you see on YouTube to get you.
That's a human's job, is to make sure that's
Sure.
accurate.
Yes.
All right, here's a question for you. I think this is kind of important, especially when you have a good crowd sitting there very interested in local events, local coverage, local opinions. What can the community do to help make your media outlet more successful in providing the best local coverage and other information? What can the community do?
I'll take that. So for me, the community, I only exist because the community interacts with me. You know, I don't have reporters that output information that you guys read. I rely on the community to contribute. So when I cover issues, right, like say, let's take the rec center, for example, that was a big one in May. So I had a ton of people writing in about the rec center, city councilors, people in government, people who were private citizens, and I had a lot of people who were supporting the rec center. And I was feeling that the publication was getting a little lopsided. And neutrality is very important to me. So I went out and asked the community. I would go into Facebook groups, whatever, personal connections, and say, hey, does anyone want to write on the other side of this issue? And I do this for pretty much every issue that I can, is trying to represent both sides as evenly as possible, so there's no perception of bias. So in that situation, I was relatively successful. I was able to get pretty much a 50-50 split of people who support the rec center and people who didn't support the rec center. That was a big story of this past campaign for city councilors, for the mayoral race, and you're not always successful. I can only publish what people send me, and then people will see the publication based on what issues and points of view are represented. But I can't represent a point of view in the Townie unless I get it from you guys. So as far as how the community can support me, it's if there's an issue, if there's a controversial issue, a polarizing issue, a side that you feel isn't being represented fairly, or something that is lopsided in local coverage, send me an op-ed, write about it, and make sure that your position is represented fairly, so that we really do get equal coverage on everything. It's not always possible. It's actually usually not always possible to get a 50-50 split, but I try to get as close as I can.
For us at the Ipswich Local News, obviously, as a nonprofit, you can donate to us. That is the easiest and most useful utilitarian way to support us. Engage with us, write us a letter, comment respectfully on an online article or a post. If you see that we've done a good job with an article, if it's interesting or factual or made you think or represented an issue well, share it. Make sure you say great article in the Ipswich Local News or Newburyport Daily News. Be a little bit of a news evangelist, I guess I would say. And then, you know, if you're a small business owner or other, you know, potential advertiser, buy advertising, support your paper that way. Because people, certainly my reader surveys show that people shop and do business with our advertisers pretty regularly.
I've already touched upon this a little bit, but I do like dogs a lot. And I think folks could feel like they can't send us things that they like. If you want to send me a picture of your wedding, I'll run it. If you want to send me a picture of a great sunset, I'll run it. If you want to send me a picture of a great rainbow, I'll run it. I mean, that stuff is really important, and I love those kind of things, and I'd like to see more of that. As I said before, politics is important for the daily news, but I also think we're a community paper, and I want to get as much of the community in the paper as possible, not just the 8% that I mentioned a few months ago. And so I really want to get everyone in there. So that's how you can best help us.
Can you explain what the 8% is? What are you
You
talking
really want me to go there?
Just give us the
Sure,
elevator.
so I think it was it on Local Pulse when I said that, or was it?
I don't think so. I think it was on Facebook.
I wrote a column about how how 8% of the population of Newburyport really has the time to pay attention to local politics. And that's kind of, so there's some folks who said, yes, I'm the 8%. And one guy on the town was like, yes, I'm 8%. And I'm like, all right, you're the 8%. And, so that was kind of fun in that sense. But my point is that civic engagement is really important. And I don't think, I think there's room for growth in that in Newburyport. And I would love to see it. And that's what I mean by the community helping us by sending us things that they don't think I would run. But I would run most things that are in good taste and have a story to tell and are part of the community. I want that kind of stuff. So the 8% comment is something that it's kind of like I was paraphrasing, not paraphrasing, but I was, how would you say that? I was kind of
Guessing?
I wasn't guessing, I was just kind of like throwing a number out there to make it for dramatic effect.
For me, it's follow whatever podcast player you use, if you use one. Follow it, rate it, tell your friends, comment on the platform if you're on Apple Podcasts, if you're on Spotify, whatever the podcast player is. All of that stuff feeds the AI algorithm that we were talking about a minute ago and helps promote it. And just tell your friends. There are many times people I know will ask me a question about what's going on in town, and they'll say, you didn't listen to the show last week? So, yeah, rate, subscribe, share. That's pretty much it.
So Joe, have you ever had the mayor on? There's one more question here. It's a specific one for Eric, and then I'm going to open this up to folks here to ask questions. Because the Ipswich Local is a kind of a different operation, and I think, it's kind of new to hear about it in the report. There are a handful of nonprofit local news sites in Massachusetts, and actually across the country there's quite a few. Do you think a nonprofit news model, and this isn't pointed at the Daily News, I was asked that question. Do you think a nonprofit news model is adaptable to most communities, or is there something unique about Ipswich and maybe a handful of other communities where nonprofits can make a go of it? You don't have to answer it.
It's a great question. I haven't given it that much thought. I think most communities, it could succeed. I'm kind of mentally flipping through the attributes of Ipswich. And what's that?
It's rich.
Yeah.
It's got money. I don't.
I think, we have our local pride, we have our business. I think there are many communities in which it could survive. Dave does make a good point. You do need financial support. That being said, we do not have donors who are giving huge amounts. Most people, we have a handful who are giving 500 and maybe 1,000. We live off of, $20, $50, $100 here and there, and also people who sign up to do, a certain amount every month, like $10 a month, $25.
Well, like PBS. So, like public radio.
Yeah, exactly. A sustaining donation. So without a lot of research, I'm optimistic that this is replicable in many communities.
Okay, thanks. So I think Jared's going to run around with a microphone, folks ask questions, and remember this is like Jeopardy, you have to ask it in the form of a question.
And I should have mentioned this earlier, we are being recorded on NCM Hub, so this is something new we're trying with the NDCC, because it's such a public interest. So just wanted to let you know before you speak that it will be there for posterity. So with that being said, who has a question? Yes.
Given Mr. Rogers' invitation to send in everything, Eben as well, what won't you publish? What are the topics or areas that you stay away from a lot?
What topics do you stay away from?
I get a good amount of columns and letters saying, piss people off, that Trump is a Nazi. I stay away from that. I don't like it, the neo-fascism, anything like that at all. So that's one taboo thing for me. Everything else, I send away. I'll look at it.
It needs to be, excuse me, clear, constructive, and add to the conversation and be locally relevant. Anything else, I won't publish. But most things that I receive fall into that category. So there are very few things that I'll reject, and the most of my editing is working with writers to take their idea and make it into something that is a little clearer than maybe it is when they get to me, and making sure that it's more comprehensible and a little more constructive sometimes. But pretty much the net is very wide.
One more thing I want to add is that, I forgot about this. We get some things that read like advertisements from businesses, and people will be upset with me if I publish things that they consider an ad for free. So it have to be, I mean, if a new business is coming in town, absolutely, they have some event at some, or like Jennifer Watten's been sending us a bunch of things about the offers who are coming in. I love that kind of stuff. Perfect. But like saying we have like the goat has decorated its bar, it's not gonna, to me, that's an advertisement. So that's part of your question.
In much like what Dave's saying, we don't do businesses unless they're food or beverage related. So I can't tell you how many realtors have called me and want to talk about housing prices in Newburyport. It's just not interesting to me, and I don't want it to become just an hour-long commercial.
Eric, how about you?
We try to stay away from supranational, political, culture war stuff. If there's a local angle to something that's kind of a national thing, like, take SNAP benefits about a month or so ago, which were being withheld. Obviously, there's a huge local impact for that, so we went to the local food banks and the nonprofits and asked for what's the local impact of that. So we're always looking for, we're certainly not opposed to touching on issues that are happening nationally, but we always want to be able to say, like, here's how it's affecting Ipswich. That's kind of our gold standard.
Thank you.
Okay. I think that Eric just answered my question. I was going to propose it to the Newburyport Daily News. I grew up in a multi-newspaper household. We were in a town, 14,000 people, and the front page was included national news. So I was wondering, you've already answered it for Ipswich, but for Newburyport, what are the kind of the ethical, you said all politics is local, and as was just pointed out, Social Security and SNAP benefits, there's all local angles. So what are the kind of the ethical or business-related or journalistic decisions that you have to make to not put so much national news in the newspaper?
That's you.
I want to be as local as possible, and one of the biggest complaints I get is that we get too much national news in the paper, and so I try not. Obviously, the front page on the print edition is the prime real estate, and I try to make it as local as possible, not as long as I have the staff to do it. And we try to cover national things in the back, and so ethical, I'm not sure how to answer that, but the readers have spoken, they want local news on the front page, and we try to do that as much as possible, considering what staff we have. When I was hired, we had 5.5 reporters, and now we're down to 2. And I'll say this, we don't have a staff photographer anymore. He's a freelancer now. It's unheard of to think of a paper without a staff photographer. And that concerns me a lot. And so we try to get as much local stuff on the front page and the first section as possible. And I will go out and take pictures myself if I have to. But that's the reality.
Yeah, and if I can just add to that, I mean, it's not about ethics, but in my time at the Daily News, there is only so much time a week for the staff that you have, and your days focused totally on local news. There are a number, generally, depending on the size of the paper, there are AP wire stories and State House newspaper stories inside the paper, obviously generated by other sources. That's not only to give people a taste of what's going on out there in the world, but it's to fill some space with quality, well-written content. Dave doesn't expect to tell you the world in the local newspaper. That's not the role of a local paper for either Ipswich or Newburyport. It's really to cover the local news.
And so the local newsroom looks a lot different than it did 10, 20, 30 years ago when each community might have a cops and courts, a city hall, an education, a GA, reporter assigned to it. Now there might not even be a newsroom at all. And through that shrinkage, you're losing, things are lost, right? There's your ability to do investigative journalism, enterprise journalism, accountability journalism is constrained. And I'm just wondering if you can speak to, if you had your druthers, if your budget was increased by scale of magnitude, what are the stories in Newburyport, in Amesbury? What are the beats, the stories, the pictures that we're not covering right now that you wish we could?
I had plenty of money. I'm sure there was a school reporter. I used to be a school reporter. And I really missed that a lot. I mean, I keep on hammering home. To me, that's the bread and butter of local journalism. Is stuff happening in the schools, in the just the community and stuff like that. I wish it was so. That'd be my first thing, is have a school reporter. I would also have another reporter to cover Newbury and West Newbury. It kills me. It really kills me that I can't provide those two towns with the coverage they deserve. When Richard was the boss, Newbury and West Newbury was covered pretty darn well. And now, like I said earlier, we're down to a core group. I feel like the Vikings are coming and storming, and we're settling in this little turf area. We're trying to protect what we have. And I'm really concerned about that. And so we're trying to get away from court reporting because of the internet. That's a whole other story. But to answer your question, school reporter and Newbury, West Newbury, are the two things I would do right away. Absolutely. And get a photographer back.
Okay, I think we only have time for about 2 more questions.
I think that all of you guys do a wonderful job. I think that the Daily News does an exceptional job locally. But my question is to Dave. How do you keep the paper affordable? That is, people are sort of getting pressed out.
I had a feeling this question was going to come eventually.
So we are providing less information and charging folks more. That's hard. That's really hard to stomach. And I feel horrible about that. There are just certain realities that we have to deal with in the industry. And I will say this to you, CJ. Don't be surprised if another print day goes away in the next couple of years. Don't be surprised if we go all digital at some point. Because the print edition is very expensive. We are journalists and we love it and we want it to be there, but it's so expensive to use print, especially with tariffs and stuff like that going on. I don't know the answer to your question. All I know is it kind of sucks, and I hear you, and it pains me, and I want to do more for my readers. I work my ass off trying to do that, and it's, we're doing our best. We're truly trying, because all of us in the newsroom really care. We love our jobs, and it's fun. But those are the reality we have. I don't know if you do this at all.
How you doing? This question is primarily directed to Eric. I'm fascinated by the fact that a lot of scientific discoveries have been made with assists from citizens, hobbyist astronomers identifying planetary bodies, and actually being really part of science work. Somebody who's an avid bird watcher who puts bird sightings into papers. makes me think of something like nuclear power plant, how citizens set up their own radiation detecting devices at their houses that the monitoring scientists will rely on to know if we have radiation. This makes me wonder if the future of news, especially local news, is in the hands of people more so than it has in the past. In other words, what the Eben is doing is really giving people an opportunity to research issues and participate in, like he said, civically engaged in dialogue online with the person. The issues that people bring up could then be, could be an assist to a professional journalist who can then take that information. There's probably all kinds of passion in this room for certain topics, and people really know what they're talking about. Yeah, they don't know how to craft the actual for occasion. This idea of
in the form of
this
a
idea of nonprofit news, right? Nonprofit news, we need to think of it more as a kind of co-op news environment, and actually allow citizens to have their voice in what is reported also.
Sure. I definitely, I think I know what you're saying. I really like the idea. We do not have the resources. No news gathering entity has the resources to employ the bird watchers, employ the astronomers ourselves, right?
Right. I don't think that would be the point. They would do that.
Yeah, so we're delighted to hear if there are people with expertise who are gathering information. I would just say get in touch with us at any of your media outlets. I think it was Dave who was talking about the dogs, or send us your rainbow pictures or whatever. I think there's a strange sense that there's some kind of blood-bringing barrier where the public can't approach or submit or participate in the news gathering and reporting. I think we should break that down a little bit, to your point. If people have expertise, they should come to us. We're not necessarily going to print everything that they write. We have space considerations. We have an obligation to the public to edit and to make the story readable and interesting, right? We have that obligation. But yes, let's break down that barrier and have more people approach their local news and make that work.
And so that's all the time we have for questions today, but I'm sure our panelists would be happy to hang around for a few minutes and answer any other questions. They love being on the hot seat because they get to put everybody else on the hot seat. But I would ask everybody if we could give a round of applause. Thank you very much. Happy holidays to everyone. Our next meeting is going to be on January 13th. We're having, our main speaker is going to be Mayor Reardon, but we will also have two of the candidates for the 6th District congressional race. So Rick Jakias and Jamie Belcito will be joining us here to speak as well. So they'll be speaking to us before we hear from Mayor Reardon. So I hope you'll join us for that meeting in January. And a very happy holidays to everyone.